Welcome to another episode of the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts. I'm Dr. Joe Hamlett. And alongside me, as always, is my esteemed colleague, Dr. Dave Peltz. How you doing, sir?
Most excellent. Glad to be here.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us here on this podcast, whether you're viewing or listening to this podcast. Of course, we are Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast, the personal, professional, and career development podcast. So we want to assist you in your journey as well as our own journey. So, with that, as if you are viewing this, you could possibly see an individual, a special guest. So, I am going to introduce Dr. Gaddiel Israel. And so, could you come off mute and share a little bit about yourself before we get started on our topic today?
Well, it's a pleasure to be on here. I'm Dr. Gaddiel Israel. I'm active duty enlisted Space Force. I am the first enlisted PhD in the Space Force.
Wow.
Um, I've been in about 18 years. I started off in the Air Force as a client systems technician and then migrated over to the Space Force. I'm the cyber enlisted manager. So I take care of all the cyber defense analysts in my in my area. Um, I'm from Panama. I'm from a small island off of Panama called Bocas. Um, I've been in the U.S. since I maybe what 5 years old or so. Love to eat, love to work out. I love all things IT, and that's just a small bit about me, we'll say.
Okay. All right. Well, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for spending some time with us today, and hopefully we'll get going here and learn a little bit more about our topic today. So, our topic is opportunities after education. So, I'm going to let you start it off, Dr. Israel. What are your thoughts about opportunities after education?
I'm a big advocate for education. So a lot of particularly enlisted members in the Air Force and the DoD, they don't realize a lot of the opportunities you have. And hey, excuse me, my dog is going off in the background, but there's a lot of opportunities we have in the military, but post military we have many opportunities as well. Just a very basic one is job opportunities. All right. So at some point in time, the green uniform is going to come off is going to come up, right? And we're going to look to see, hey, what can we do? How can we make our living? I don't want to call it side hustles, but we want to make sure that we're working our normal job, but there's also other opportunities as well, like adjunct professor.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when I thought professor, I thought, oh, you have to have a doctorate. You have to be at that top echelon in the education fields to even teach. But if you look at the online environment, our teachers have master's degrees,
Yeah.
bachelor's degrees. You can be a teacher while enlisted and get paid for that.
Yeah.
But no one ever talks about this.
Right. Yeah.
And when I graduated with my doctorate, somebody was like, "Hey, why don't you go be a professor? How can I be a professor when I'm active duty?" Yes, I have a beard, but I'm still active duty, I promise you all. And I was like, how can I do this? Well, they said, you can be an adjunct professor. I was like, how? Well, look at the online scene. Majority of active duty military are in online classes.
Yeah.
But these teachers who are teaching us, they have bachelors, they have masters, and they're grading our papers, interacting all virtually. The game has changed. No
Mhm.
longer are you just going to a
Absolutely.
school
Yeah.
and sitting there and listening to, Dr. Dave Peltz talking about statistics, which I love, right? But now he can teach it online and I can interact with them just like we're doing right here on Zoom.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So one of the great opportunities we have is being an adjunct professor or things of that nature. That's one of the good ones right there. Your thoughts?
Yeah, so Joe and I have both gone down that path, and when I started my teaching journey in higher education, uh, I had just completed. I think I was 4 months out after my PhD, and I started teaching. And at that time in 2013, um, it was pretty much required that you have a doctorate of some sort. It was very rare that they would allow you to teach with a master's degree and unheard of with a bachelor's degree. And so I'm glad you brought that up because there are a lot of opportunities out there after education. And sometimes, and especially today in the last few years, it's become accepted that if you have certain levels of certifications or professional experience without a degree, you can also teach and conduct training sessions. And I don't want us to just limit education to formal education like college, but there are also certification programs. There are other unofficial, I shouldn't say unofficial, different types of training to where you get certifications, industry certifications that all contribute to this topic. And it's amazing what you can do with an education, and that education could be professional experience. With enough professional experience, you can teach, for example, like Dr. Israel saying. So I think it's a fascinating topic that we decided upon for this because as you mentioned, you're still active duty doing this. And that before, I would say, even I'm maybe a little bit out of line, but I know when in the early 2000s, that was absolutely unheard of. You were lucky to be able to just go to school to get your associate's degree while you were in the military, let alone now, which I think is absolutely awesome. So yeah, and congratulations for that, because for those that are listening and viewing, prior military enlisted with a terminal degree is an extremely small percentage of the active duty military. It's virtually unheard of, if you put things into perspective.
So I'm glad you brought up the IT aspect. I love IT. I get triggered when I hear IT. I just get happy, right? So under 8140, the DoD guideline for cyber certifications, it was 8570 before. There's a requirement for you to fulfill particular certifications like A plus, CompTIA A plus, CompTIA Sec plus, Network plus, those type things as well. And a lot of times the military will send us out to go to boot camps for training, right? But ask yourself in these trainings, who's the one teaching these trainings? It's not doctors. It's usually people that have either one, no degree, like you said, they have a specialization in that field, or they might have a bachelor's or master's, but it's not doctors. So they're able to go to that route by way of having that specialized knowledge. And that's the thing I love right there. Many opportunities.
Yep. Well, I'll go back to kind of like Dave. I did the same thing when I graduated in 2014. I immediately started teaching in the adjunct professor space. And back then, even I think when I went through my orientation training or class, there was only a couple of us that actually had a doctorate degree, and then most everybody else had a master's degree. And now you fast forward 10 years, and I actually just did another orientation for another university I'm teaching at these days. And there was, again, same thing. There was about 10 of us in this orientation to become adjunct professors, and there was only a couple of us that had a doctorate degree, and everyone else had that master's degree. So you're right, it does open a door of opportunity for people with education to become college professors. And I even think about that today, to say that I've been a college professor for 10 years now. And again, that was never in my sights. I never thought I would one day be a college professor, but it's so cool now to think about the opportunities are there for us. Even you touched on, the idea of, and Dave touched on it too, back in the early 2000s, you had to go, brick and mortar to school. And now I'm a perfect example of someone who was able to utilize that online space to earn all of my degrees. I mean, literally being able to, you know, take classes while deployed, while in schools, everything else, and to continue to further my education. Where in the past, I tried brick and mortar 4 times. And I just couldn't do it because of my schedules. I mean, I actually went from day shift to a night shift, had to drop out of the class. So it just, now those things are far minimized, and gives you that opportunity to do that. So yeah, where we are today, it's almost no excuse for people not to go to school if they really want to go back to school.
Thank you. I'm a big advocate, and I just did a professional development seminar a couple of weeks ago, and I sat down and I thought about this. If I run into you, I don't care if you're under my office, if I'm your supervisor or not. If I talk to you, I'm going to ask you about education because I know the benefits of it, and I'll say, hey, listen, are you doing education? And a lot of times people will say, yes, I started some classes, this, that, and the other. But then I'll say, well, have you finished education? They'll say, yes, I'm done with my bachelor's. I'm good. I'm done. And I'll say, well, what about your master's? Well, I don't want to do that. Well, why not? Well, I'm scared of the thesis. Or they'll say, I'm scared of the dissertation. And we'll have a whole conversation, but part of that conversation is the opportunities afterwards. Because I bet y'all lunch, I'm really betting y'all lunch. Somebody has talked to you all about consulting. They said, hey, Dr. Peltz, let me get your mind on this. Dr. Hamlett, let me get your mind on this real fast.
Yeah.
And they do this all the time. But watch this. That's also another side gig. Because again, we think differently. Don't never go to us and say, hey, statistics say, because we'll get triggered. We'll say, wait a minute, hold on, no proof of this. Well, don't ever do that. But people will come to us and say, hey, Dr. Peltz, I want your opinion on this in your specialty. Dr. Hamlett, what is your expert opinion? And a couple of weeks ago, I had a phone call, random phone call. And they said, hey, we would like to get you hired to be a consultant for a general. I was like, I can't do that. I'm active duty. And they're like, well, just tell them, well, that we want you at the military and tell your commander. I can't do that. I'm in the military. I can't do that. And they were like, just talk to your colonel and say, hey, we'll match your retirement, get you out right now. I can't do that. I'm active duty. Wait a minute.
There's a certain part of this sequence that's it's not clicking.
Right? But they said, okay, no worries. Talk to us afterwards. But consulting is another actual benefit after you graduate. They can go and say, hey, Dr. Hamlett, we know that you specialize in 1, 2, 3, XYZ. Let me pay you for your mind. Help me not to get sued, Dr. Hamlett. Help me not to get sued.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I like, I like that you brought in the consulting piece. There's also the piece that I talk to my students about, and that's and peers and colleagues, and that is the opportunities after education or training so far as promotion or career advancement. What are you doing that no one else is doing to separate yourself? Because when you have 200 people internally applying for the same job and they all look the same on paper, how do you distinguish that? Well, if your paper looks a little bit better, if you've gone above and beyond, if you've taken those extra steps, gotten those extra certifications or those extra degrees, that's what's going to help separate you and provide opportunities for advancement. Or maybe you're just in this position at this company for right now, so you can get into the company that you do want to be in, or the position that you do want to be in. That this training and education can provide those opportunities inside your company, outside your company, and allow you to move up, over, around, through. Yeah, I'm a huge, obviously we're proponents of education, otherwise we wouldn't be sitting here, the three of us.
No, I liked what you said about the consulting space and being able to do that, and I'll sum it up in this question. One of my young cousins, I want to say she was probably 5 or 6, maybe 7 years old, and she said, "You're a doctor." I said, "Yeah," but I said I'm not a medical doctor, and she was like, "So what does that mean? What do you do then?" And then she kind of was, I could see her, she was thinking, she was like, so do you help businesses when they're sick? And I said, you know what? I had never thought of it that way, but you're right. When they have problems, they can come to me and say, hey, Dr. Hamlett, can you help us with this problem or this situation? So I laugh about that now because it was just funny to hear a kid really put it in terms that everybody could understand. So, yeah, very cool.
I like the conversation where or the pinpoint of, hey, you have to distinguish between these two, and that's a real thing.
Yep.
To include, while you're in the military, they're going to rack and stack all the individuals and say, who is my best soldier, who's my best airman, who's my best guardian? And there's either you have it or you don't. I'm gonna be real with you.
Yeah.
And the benefits of the education piece is you stand out. You do.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
we and me and David talked about this, on the podcast before, especially in the civilian sector. If you're out there, and again, you're displaced, 500 employees are displaced at a job, and again, now those 500 employees with similar skill sets are going to try and apply at a job. What's going to separate you from them, right? Everybody's got an associate's degree? Well, what if you got a bachelor's or master's degree? Now you start to further separate yourself from your peers because you, again, like Dave said earlier, you went above and beyond. That job may have required an associate's, but you went above and beyond that, got the bachelor's, the master's, or whatever level you ended at.
That's
So
right.
again, it's that separation piece that you had, like you said, you have it or you don't.
Yeah, and for my clients, I tell them, what kind of education you have? I don't have any. Well, then start and then put that on your resume. I'm starting my associates. An anticipated graduation date, month and year asterisk to draw attention that you're currently working on. Now, if you've been working on your associate's degree for 10 years, I wouldn't put that out there because you have to be actively pursuing it. That's a key component. I've been working on my high school diploma for 30 years. Well, maybe it's time you buckle down and get it. So, but when we talk about separating ourselves, you've got your bachelor's, start working on your master's because working on your master's looks better than just a bachelor's. And then what's the next step? Well, you've obtained your master's. Well, now what are you gonna do? Well, I'm working towards this certification. And once you get that, what's the next thing? Well, I've achieved that certification. So it's these steps that lead to the final part of that piece of that education. I'm working on this class, I'm working on that class, I'm working on a different degree, I'm working on a different certification, I'm working with other clients, or other peers or mentors. All these pieces of education come together, and they do, they complement each other. Having a mentor and being a mentor are part of that learning journey.
You know what I found out? Again, if any of my guardians say I'm doing school, I'm gonna have an hour-long conversation with you because I'm excited for you. I want you to do good, but I want to make sure you're doing it right. Majority of the colleges now are assigning mentors to each student. I love this
Mhm.
because I wish I had a Dr. Hamlet next to me to say, "Hey, listen, don't do that."
Yeah,
Right,
right.
right.
Wish,
Yep,
I wish I
yep,
did.
yep.
Or Dr. Peltz to say, "Hold on a minute, did you think about it this way?"
Yeah.
And I did have an advisor during my chair, but I wish I had one earlier on in my master's and my bachelor's because I would have got done way faster if I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree that that's a huge benefit now for the students because just like being a leader, we need to be able to address everyone's need on the individual level because we can't again throw out the blanket statement. Well, we all do it this way. We all need to do it that way. No, some people may need more than others, or some may need less than others. So being able to identify that and then help them or assist them in their time of need. So that is critical to have mentors, like you say, because that's actually what happened to me too. I started down the path. I was actually going to get my doctorate in IT, and then I took several classes in that discipline, and then I finally realized. And I didn't have a mentor, an advisor to say, "Hey, well, it seems like you tend to lean toward this." And that's what happened after several classes I took. I ended up switching over to organizational leadership because I wanted to work with people. I wanted to help people. But you're right. If I so I wasted 3 or 4 classes in that discipline to switch over to my ultimately my goal of being in organizational leadership. But you're right. If I would have had someone to maybe help me with that process, I might have knocked off a couple of classes or got me focused on my direction sooner
Yeah,
rather than
and
later.
along the education journey, I want to include that there are trade schools. Things have changed dramatically over the last 8 to 10 years, where there's a shortage of trades, technicians in the trades, and you have to. You can go to trade schools, you can go into apprenticeships, and a lot of those are done through people without formal educations and higher education. Those are experienced, highly experienced professionals that have a gift to give that the country absolutely needs right now. You can actually start as an apprentice in trades and work your way up and be making as much, if not more, than someone with a master's degree.
That's
I mean,
facts.
and that
Yeah.
is amazing. That hasn't happened in 2 or 3 decades.
So I actually just met somebody yesterday. It's crazy we're talking about this. I love talking about this. Just yesterday, I said, "Hey, young man, what do you do for a living?" He said, "Well, I'm a locksmith." So I'm putting two and two together, and I'm like, "Hey, how long was that training you took to be a locksmith?" He said, "Watch this, Dr. Israel. It was only 3 days." I said, wait, what? And I said, now, I'm not the brightest person in the room. I'll give you that. If you say IT, my ears will perk up. Outside of that, I'm not the greatest engineer in the world. But I was like, hey, how much do you make? And he said, well, I make over 100,000 a year. I said, wait a
Wow.
minute, wait, what?
But yeah, maybe we chose the wrong field.
I'm serious. And he was like, I'm gonna be honest with you, I monetize off of people locking themselves out. He said, Dr. Israel, how in the last 2 months, how many times did you lock yourself out? I said, I lock myself out every other week out of my car. I'm gonna be honest with you, out of my house and everything. Who do I call? I call the same locksmith because I trust him. He says, I make over 100,000 easy, but those trade schools,
Wow.
they'll get you paid. They
Yep.
will. Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Oh my goodness. Three days of training.
It was
And
3 days. And I
wow.
said, well, what does that entail? He goes, well, I can unlock a car, I can make keys, I can do X, Y, and Z, I can duplicate as well. And I was like, there's a trust factor in there too. So that's good.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Right.
Yeah. And there are many trade schools and apprenticeships that they will pay you to go through their training.
Mm.
When I worked for a government entity, they had there was 2 programs that I oversaw that they would pay you full time while you went through this training.
Interesting.
And then if you decided not to stay with them, you still had that formal training that you could take someplace else if you want. They'll say this entity that wasn't going to pay you enough. Well, I'm going to take that to someone else. There are some entities that will pay you to get a CDL, commercial driver's license,
It's true.
or pay for most of it, and you'll make that back within a matter of a couple of months.
Wow.
So what I realized in my generation, I'm gonna call myself old, okay? I've been in 18 years, right? And I realized that the military does a good job with scaring you to stay in. I'm gonna be honest with you. They'll say, "Hey, stay in. What are you gonna do afterwards?" I don't know. I don't know if I get out. When I get out. But if you do your education piece, I'm not gonna say you have nothing to worry about, but you're bettering your chances when you get out.
Right.
So yes, get that associates, get that bachelor's, the master's. Why not go for the doctorate? Don't be scared of that. There's many opportunities outside the military and just in everyday life if you get your education done. But
Right.
don't be fearful of the world. The world has been just evolving as we go. Every day, every year that we're here, you'll be okay. You can find something, but better your chances.
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
let's talk about the terminal degree aspect. So Joe has a DBA, doctorate in business administration. You and I have PhDs. Most people are familiar with the term doctorate in philosophy. And yeah, there are written requirements for those, but there are also degrees out there that are practitioner degrees that do not require a dissertation,
Facts.
or may not even require any form of written justification or display of expertise. When you start getting in the medical field, I've talked to physicians who have said, I couldn't do a PhD program. That's way too much work. It's like, I can't write that much. I didn't want to write that much. There's doctorates in strategic leadership. That's a practitioner degree. There is some writing requirement in there, but it's very much a project-based demonstration to say, hey, I can show you how to improve, and here's an example. So there's doctorates in education, there's veterinary science, pharmaceutical. I mean, there are so many different types of terminal degrees. And one of the things that Joe and I talk about offline a lot is that when we talk about terminal degrees make up 2% of the US population. And that's kind of a cool thing to say that you're a part of, to have that doctor in front of your name, or the different letters after. It's cool to be able to say that. And on a lighter note, when people say, "Oh, what do you have your doctorate degree in?" I say, "Well, organizational leadership and human resource development." I'm a doctor, not a physician. So don't come to me like you said, Dr. Israel. Don't come to me for medical advice, because it's not going to be good, you know.
I agree. I think the masses need to know that there's different types. The second Space Force enlisted doctor, Dr. Nathaniel Juarez. I met him while I'm at this assignment, and he's a DIT, a Doctorate in Information Technology. And I was like, I didn't know what that was, but I looked it up and learned, and I was like, okay. He did do a dissertation, but like you said, there are doctoral degrees where you don't do a dissertation at all.
Right. Yep.
But I will say, if any military members watching this, okay, if you have the capacity to sit in front of two colonels and a major, two colonels and a chief, you can do a dissertation, y'all. You can do it. I promise you. The writing isn't that bad. You're doing written papers anyway. Remember the old days when you'd get in trouble in the military? They would make you do a essay. Hey, go write me
Right.
2 pages about why it's important to be a leader. We're doing it anyway.
Yeah, yeah,
But
absolutely.
you can sit in front of somebody, you can sit in front of Dr. Peltz and say, hey, let me explain to you my thoughts, what I've researched, and prove my point. You can do it. I did it.
There's three of us in this forum right now that have done it,
Yeah.
either while in the military or for me, post-military. I completed my bachelor's the month I was discharged, and then I went on to get my master's, and I took 4 years off, and then and there is a challenge when you take time off between degrees. Keep that period as short as possible. Take a year, take 6 months, 9 months, maybe 2 years. After 2 years, there are some challenges that you have to kind of reboot your mind and the way of thinking to get back into the game. But it's possible. There's three of us sitting right here that have done it.
Yeah. I want to ask you, Dr. Israel, so what motivated you to earn your doctorate degree?
Oh goodness. So that's a good question. Here we go. As a young airman, I was a bad airman. I was bad. I was really bad. I was fighting, cursing people out. I was
Wow.
pretty bad. And this technical sergeant grabbed me, he threw me in office. He said, sit down. And I was like, here we go. He's just gonna chew me out. Here we go. But I never gotten paperwork. For some odd reason, I
Wow.
had an Article
Okay.
15, I reprimand nothing. He says, what are you doing? I was like, that guy did this to me, blah, blah, blah. I had knocked somebody out. And he was like, let me show you something. And what he did was he made a PowerPoint about me. It was weird. And he showed me two tables. He said, this is where you're at right now. This is how much money you'll make if you get kicked out right now. I was like, that's not bad. I can make, about 30,000 a year. And he said, this is where you could be at if you listen. I said, oh, there's commas in there. There's zeros in there.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And he said, listen, I've been helping you out, but just try what I'm saying. Just try it. Go to school. And I said, now, I'm very, very smart. I'm very, very smart. I'm very technical. And I was like, okay, all right, let's try it. So then I started with my CCAF, the Community College of the Air Force, in information technology. It was very easy. Tech school was very easy to me. It was boring because I already knew all this stuff. I could tear down a computer, put it back together, like blindfolded. It was crazy. It was just boring to me. But since I was bored, I was getting in trouble. So I needed to challenge myself.
Mhm.
So I went through my associate's cakewalk, but he made a big deal of it, Dr. Hamlett. He was like, you finished it. Great job. I was like, why is he so happy? I was a mean person. I was like, I don't like this. I don't like all this happiness. He's like, you did a great job. And he's celebrating. We got a cake and everything, blah, blah, blah. And then he's like, all right now go for your bachelor's. I was like, okay. So then I did the bachelor's. I'm going to be honest with you, y'all. The bachelor's was the hardest thing throughout all of my degrees, because
Wow.
it challenged me on a whole different level. And I was like, I failed a class? Wait, what? Oh my gosh. Okay, bet. Now you're challenging me. So then I went and did it again, passed it, and then he says, great job. Celebrated like crazy. Now go for your master's. Okay. Then it was a whole different level again. And I was like, this is a little difficult, but it's a different type of thinking. I was like, all right. Went through the master's, but I had fun with it. I had fun. And then he kept showing me, like Dr. Hamlett and Dr. Peltz said, that he started showing me what I can do post graduation once I got it done. And I was like, now I have goals. Now I have tables and goals I can go through. And I finished the master's. Master's was the greatest one. In my opinion, it was the easiest thing. It was a year.
Same here. It's the easiest, most
Yep.
fun. Just you're in your mode and you're just like, got this.
So then after the master's, I was like, I can keep going, but what else is there? I don't know what to do. And then someone was like, go for your doctorates. I was like, I can't do that. I'm in the military. I can't do that. And I was like, yeah, you can. How? It took me 3 months to figure out how to get into the doctoral program. And I found it with North Central University, now National University.
I'm a graduate of North Central.
Hey, here we go. And
Wow.
I called them up and they were like, you know what? And it was very odd. Dr. Peltz, this was very odd. They was like, hey, call us at this time on this date. Sure, okay. By then I'm a tech sergeant and I'm out of my bad phase. But I called them up and they were like, hey, we have Dr. Kabia, we have Dr. Yoy, a bunch of doctors on the line on this call. I don't know what's going on, but it was a application process. I had no
Okay.
idea. I had no idea. And they said, you know what? You've done well with your bachelor's, your master's. What's something that you would want to fix? What's a question that you would want to, just fix? And I was like, I want to fix, I keep hearing in the Air Force that all your computers are horrible. But I want to know why the computers are so stagnant, so legacy. So I want to know why the Air Force keeps retaining the legacy systems in their service. And they said, that's a great idea. Let's put you in the program, you write about it. I was like, okay. Click hung up and they were like, hey, that was your application process. I said, what? What just happened? Oh my God. But the reason why I kept going is because I think it was you, Dr. Hamlett, that said this. I had a mentor, I didn't realize it. I had somebody believe in me who said, you can do better. You're not just that guy who's knocking out airmen and fighting in the back of the dorms or whatever. You actually have potential, and I'm going to invest in you. I had somebody that was able to invest in me. And I think each one of us can say that at some point in time, we probably had somebody that was able to invest in us in some way, shape, or form.
Yep,
Wow.
absolutely. So we're down the last couple minutes, Joe. Just to give you a little bit of a time check.
Yeah. So thanks for everything you talked about to this point as far as opportunities after education. So, what are your final thoughts, Dr. Israel? What would you want to leave our audience with on this topic?
My final thoughts, care. Care for those who are around you, for those who you supervise. Invest in them, invest in your personnel, and they'll return the investment in the corporation and in you as a person. Okay, you are the one who can set that standard and boost up the education within your environment. So you are the one. Wait for no one else.
Wow. Well, thanks for that. Dave, did you have any final
Um,
thoughts?
I want to thank Dr. Israel for taking time out of his schedule. It's always awesome to have a, a fellow peer veteran that's obtained, especially enlisted, that's obtained a terminal degree. It's a very small group, like I said. It's a brother and sisterhood, and we always, when we meet these people, we always want to hold them up and share them with the world because it is a very unique category to be in. Not downplaying anyone else's education journey, but it is a unique journey. And I just want to thank Dr. Israel for joining us today. Really, really appreciate you sharing your journey with us.
Thank you, team. Thank you, Dr. Peltz. Thank you, Dr. Hamlet. I would love to do this again. I love these conversations.
Absolutely.
I thoroughly enjoyed this. Thank you all so much.
You're very welcome. And again, thanks for being on the podcast. And I won't belabor us and try and throw anything else in there. Again, it was a great conversation. Actually had to look at the time and say, oh, we're getting really close to time. So again, we could probably go on talking for hours, but it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast, and hopefully people will take something away from this podcast, like we always hope. If one person could take just a bit or piece that helps them on their journey, then we've succeeded. So, with that, again, if you want to connect with Dr. Israel, we'll have his information in the description. I'm sure he'd love to hear from you, especially if you're an airman out there or current military member that is thinking about education. He'd definitely be able to motivate you. You heard. He'll give you a 1 hour free session about the education journey. So if you're having those questions or anything like that, feel free to reach out to it. Again, thanks for tuning into this podcast, and we just want you to continue being your not so ordinary you.